You're listening to the Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network. Yeah, it's a mouthful. For more great shows like the one you're about to enjoy, visit electronicmediacollective.com. And now, our feature presentation.
In a world where film studios have pillaged every young adult novel, DC'd every comic book series, and Frankensteined every silver screen monster in search of the next movie mega franchise. Two nerds, two movies, one cinematic universe.
This is Jasper.
And this is Randy.
We watched two movies.
About guys that drive cars.
Alrighty.
Hey Jasper, what did we watch? What did we watch?
Well, we watched Drive from 2011,
And The Transporter from 2002.
which I didn't know was that old.
It is, yeah, 2002. So the reason we watch these movies, for one, the Jason Statham, as I apparently kept saying last episode. Nobody pointed it out, though. I pointed it out to myself. But the Jason Statham connection between Transporter and Crank 2 from last episode.
Yep.
But also because apparently these two movies are two of our favorite movies. Not both of them necessarily, but The Transporter I found out was one of your favorite movies.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, I've been waiting for something to pair with one of my favorite movies, Drive. And I figured this was the perfect double feature because they're like roughly about the same thing, only completely different.
Only not.
Only not. They're the same, yet wildly different.
Yep.
So, you want to lead with Drive?
Yeah, we'll leave with Drive. Okay, so Drive is about a mysterious Hollywood stuntman and mechanic who moonlights as a getaway driver and finds himself in trouble when he helps out his neighbor. It is directed by Nicholas Winding Refn.
Nicholas Winning Refn?
Refn, is that how you say it?
Yep.
Okay. Writers are Hossein Amini on screenplay, and James Salas wrote the book.
Mm-hmm.
It stars Ryan Gosling as the driver, Carey Mulligan, Bryan Cranston as Shannon, and Albert Brooks as Bernie Rose.
Oh, you're forgetting an important one.
Is that Oscar Isaac?
Nope. Ron Perlman.
Yeah, Ron Perlman as Nino.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, he's not a main character, but it's freaking Ron Perlman.
Yeah, it kind of got me. I was like, oh, look, Ron Perlman's in here.
You're right. Since we're still on casting, side note, Carey Mulligan, I like in this. And I did not realize until looking up information on this movie just the other day, she plays the lead in a very popular Doctor Who episode called Blink. I didn't realize that was the same lady.
She does look familiar, though. Like, I've seen her in something before. Although
She'd been she was in.
I haven't seen Doctor Who just yet. But
Oh, you start Doctor Who, you're going to sidetrack this. You're going to derail this entire podcast series.
Take the whole
I'll be
train
like,
off.
so you're watching Doctor Who now? That's what we're doing.
It's Doctor Who episode 1 against Doctor Who episode 2. Cinematic Universe.
There have been Doctor Who movies that are not canon. There are old Doctor Who movies. I might bring those in someday, but I don't want that to be your first exposure to Doctor Who. So, okay. Anyway, sidetracked. Drive. I want you to start. I want to hear your opinions on this. You had not seen this before?
I have never seen this movie. I've heard of it when it came out in 2011. I did want to see it. The reason why I like Transporter is because, of course, I love driving, but I wanted to see this movie when it came out, and I never got around to it. This movie was totally... I thought it was going to be like, say, Baby Driver or Transporter, but it was totally like... I felt like almost it was like a GTA game and movie.
Really?
Like you're on this like mission, you think you're just a driver and then suddenly you're, a killing maniac. But
he does go maniac.
I thought the style of this movie was really good.
Mm-hmm.
The content was just really crazy. Like you think he's going to do one thing, he does the totally opposite.
Mm-hmm.
But I almost thought, again, like I said to you before, I thought he wasn't going to talk at all in this movie. And I thought he was just going to do just stare at people all the time.
The whole time. Say no words. He says very little.
But The styling, the gore was like, it wasn't technically over the top, but it wasn't like almost fake, I would say.
No,
like, it was legitimately happens.
Yeah, it was realistic gore.
Yeah.
Just extremely gory.
They actually did, I felt like they did the car mechanics well. I feel like they did the engine sounds really well. Like it felt like the car was actually accelerating. Like some movies are like, and like you could already tell the car was already like in a higher gear. And then they just dropped the sound of a motor in there. That whole first scene when he's driving around the robbers is just like you hear the car like speed up, and he's like, every time he sees a cop, he's like, no, I'm out of here. You could tell too, I was getting into it because like I could tell him like, all right, just back up into that alley. And then he actually backs up in the alley. What was your take on Drive?
Transporter was one of your favorite movies, so that would make Drive one of my favorite movies. And it is. I love this movie. You mentioned that opening scene. I like how it's done. There's very little dialogue through the whole scene. It's very much like the movie. The opening scene is very much like the movie, where it alternates between quiet moments where they're like, does that cop car see us? Or he's at one point, he's literally tailing the cop. It alternates between that quiet, like tension, and boom, loud sounds. They got to get away. I thought it was very well done, that opening scene. But as a whole, yeah, I don't know. I love this movie. I like that alternating quiet moments, or just in this case, kind of like emotional moments, to, over the top violence, just insane violence. And when there is violence, it's kind of realistic in that it's just an explosion of violence. Things just happen. Somebody gets attacked and it's loud and all this.
It's like a guy has like his hand on the dial and it's like 2 2 10 2 2 10. Like
it's so far to where 2 2 1 1 silence. And just Gosling staring. Ryan Gosling and Carey Mulligan just staring at each other. I like that too. So when this movie came out, I know one lady attempted to sue the studio for what do they call it? False advertising, because she was expecting, a lot of people were disappointed. They were expecting this big, I'm guessing, Transporter style crazy action movie with insane driving stunts and stuff. And what they got is occasional bursts of violence and action. Not a lot of action. The driving sequences that are there aren't that many, but when they're there, I think they're really good. And then the rest of the movie is just very like kind of not low key, but very quiet, slow thing, It's almost kind of like a mafia movie and a driving movie. The mafia aspect is, that's where the plot comes in, because without that, you really just have Ryan Gosling driving around in a car or standing and staring at Carey Mulligan. But I would say the mafia aspect it's needed, but it's kind of the weakest aspect of the movie for me, just because of how it's done. Like, I don't get a sense that you see other guys in Nino's place. That's Ron Perlman. He's kind of the main. Ron Perlman and Albert Brooks are the two villains, I guess you'd say, quote unquote villains. They're the two like mob guys. Mm-hmm. And you see other people in Nino's joint, but for the most part, I don't get a sense that like their organization is really any bigger than those two guys being angry in Nino's joint. You know what I mean? Like they have money to throw around. Obviously, they have drivers, and there's occasionally people around, but like the mob doesn't seem very big. Like it doesn't seem like there's really much to it beyond that. That's, I'd say, the main flaw is it feels small, and it's okay that most of the movie feels small. Like the world feels kind of small, but I'd say that's the main flaw for me of the movie. But overall, I love it. I like the tone, even though it's kind of manipulative and a lot of the emotion comes from longing stares and 80s influenced synth music. Like it works for me. So I like the emotional content. I like the feel of it, even when it's kind of cheesy, even when it's a real human being. I enjoy it. I think it's good. In terms of a real relationship, I don't know how well the Ryan Gosling character and Carey Mulligan character would work out in the long run. But even though they pretty much just stare at each other, like I like it. I like the dynamic they have going there.
I like the thing between them where he is just trying to kind of care for her for a while. Kind of putting it with another movie is say like Dunkirk. I've seen Dunkirk. They kind of have where there's not really a lot of talking. And this movie I felt like did that like correct. Like Dunkirk, I'm like, would someone just say something, or like which something else happened.
Okay.
But these, like this one did it was like you said, quiet, 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 and then bam, like they're like, holy crap. At first I'm like, man, this is just weird. Like they just kind of staring at each other. But I think the movie had enough going on for it to be okay with me.
Okay, cool. I was concerned about how this movie would strike you. I kind of expect you to not enjoy the movie, but then again, like I'm biased, but I think it's a good movie. Like I think it's a solid movie. I guess I could see why some people wouldn't be into it because the pacing is a little weird. It's a little slow.
Yeah.
But actually, I don't know. It moves around at a fine pace. It's just where there's normally a lot of talking, those are the scenes that are maybe a little slower. For me, it never drags on to being unbearable. Sure, they stare at each other, but they say things. They just take their time saying them. Visually, I think this movie is fantastic. I love the look of it. The cinematography is great. There's so many good shots, and there's so many shots of just like at one point, I guess towards the end, when Bryan Cranston's character towards his exit of the movie,
Yeah.
it's in that garage, and just even in the garage, like warm golden sunlight through the bay doors. Just the way it's shot, it looks fantastic. And it's just a garage, you know?
Yeah.
So I really enjoy the visual look of this movie as well.
Also kind of tapping back on the tension.
Mm-hmm.
Felt like a lot of times with the cinematography, like you were in the car with him. Like
Mm-hmm.
you were sitting there watching lights go across his eyes
Yeah.
and riding with him. But I like the style of it. The style of it was really good. It was dark, but not like, dark Batman.
It's not like not like Seven dark.
I was about to say Seven dark. It's not kind of like where Seven was.
It's not like dirty and
Moody.
muddy. Yeah, exactly. And moody. It's dark. Most of it takes place at night. Not all of it, but even then it's still kind of bright and it's well lit. Just the composition is killer.
It's like what I always kind of call like Vegas lighting. It's dark, but it's like bright.
Like bright neon almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was almost like that nightlife feeling, like he's driving through the city and stuff.
And there's a lot of scenes where he's just driving, and not like getaway car driving. He's just driving.
Right.
Unless he's just like sitting in their apartment hanging out, when they do things, it's driving. Drive is perfect, like the title, because that's what he does. Even like that's his date night. That's everything. He'll take him driving through that area in LA. I know you can't really drive down there, but what do you call it? In GTA 5, I always drove down there.
Where the Ferris was at?
No, big ravine area.
Oh, runoffs.
Yeah, he's driving down there.
Yeah.
I enjoy that because I'm like, GTA.
There's an actual name for those, and I can't remember it. But
GTA,
basically where the slanted cement walls and there's the creek going in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned GTA, and that's kind of interesting to me. I hadn't really thought about it other than the fact that that one scene always made me think GTA because of driving down in that area. But I do kind of see your point. Whereas something like Transporter or Baby Driver, where it's more kinetic, I don't know, Drive has that kind of that colorful look mixed with like the kind of a somewhat grounded, dark crime world.
Yeah.
But Drive obviously doesn't have like any of the humor that GTA has. But it does have the somber moments, because GTA will still try to go for that somber feel sometimes. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's an interesting comparison that you mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause there was, in Grand Theft Auto 4, there was a DLC called The Ballad of Gay Tony.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what this movie felt like. That whole driving, but also kind of a killer type thing.
Yeah. And wasn't your character, he was mainly the driver for Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I was like,
and The Ballad of Gay Tony had that kind of neon. They didn't go full 80s style. I mean, GTA 4, that's definitely the more somber, dark of the series.
Yeah. They also, if you think about it, 4 kind of, the cinematography on 4, like just the play style was almost kind of like a 7 darkness, if you think about it. And then it was like at night when...
Especially with Roman?
Yeah, when the Ballad of Gay Tony came out, it was like kind of went into that Drive scenery.
So then would you say maybe, okay, this isn't totally accurate.
If I remember right, I think you could only do the missions at night.
Was Lost and Damned maybe, I don't know. But was Lost and Damned, would that be kind of, I guess that'd be like Sons of Anarchy or something. There's a Ron Perlman connection, but so would that be like the Crank 2 or something where it's all like industrial areas and warehouses, and I know Crank, like it's not like white trash, but just trashy people,
Right.
Welcome to Grand Theft Cinematic Universe, where we figure out how every movie ties into Grand Theft Auto series.
Right. I think we've mentioned that before.
Oh, man.
Got Cinematic and this one.
So this movie, I'm not going to necessarily say started the 80s nostalgia throwback in movies and music, but I know like synthwave and 80s throwback synth music was around before this, obviously, because they have like a lot of the soundtrack is that kind of music. But as somebody who's been kicking around like the online synthwave scene for several years now, I know for a fact a lot of people were heavily influenced by this movie. So I know this movie had an impact and kind of aided in the explosion of that music, which was kind of inevitable because nostalgia goes in cycles, right? But I mean, I think this is one of the first mainstream modern movies to kind of take that aesthetic. I mean, the credits, like think of it's got that hot pink cursive lettering, you know?
Right. This could easily be set in the 80s. Like,
oh yeah, for sure.
But that was like, what time? I wonder what year it's supposed to be. But I know that the Impala he drives at first is like at least a 2011.
It's contemporary.
Or 2008. I should say it's 2008 Impala.
And I think people use cell phones and stuff, but it really could be any time period.
Also, I think the big thing we kind of missed too was you saw, of course you did, but saw the watch on his steering wheel, where he said his thing is like you have 5 minutes. But that one, I think it was when he's with the guy, Standard is his name, which is a real weird name. But when he's with Standard, you hear that ticking so loudly, it's like. I was waiting for it to just go ding.
Yeah.
And then just watch him drive off.
So, okay, let's talk a little bit about the plot, because the synopsis leaves off with like he befriends his neighbor, and he does. It's this woman and her child whose husband is in prison at that time, Standard, who you mentioned. And they kind of have a thing, like Gosling and the neighbor, Carey Mulligan. But they don't like really hook up, but they hang out all the time, and he takes her on drives, and he like hangs out with them at their house, and they held hands. Like that's as far as they had gone. But then her husband gets out of jail. And so there's a bit of awkwardness there. I think I mentioned it before we started recording, but I like that scene where the husband first meets Gosling. It's just that awkwardness in the hallway where he's like, so you've been what's the son's name? I can't remember.
Benicio or Benito?
Something like that. He's like, he says you've been coming around a lot, helping out a lot. He's just got this like, huh.
There was also a point where he like repeats himself. He's like, did you hear me? And he's just like staring down.
You know what? That's so funny because that's one of the few times where Gosling's character does his normal thing like he does through the whole movie. He just stares at him and waits like 5 minutes before saying anything. And when he says something, it's always so soft. Yeah. Yeah. He's just barely there, right?
Yeah.
But he does that to the husband in this scene. And it's one of the few times where a character in the movie reacts to Gosling like a real person would, like, you just gonna stare at me? Like, what is this? Like, he has this reaction to him. And I understand, like, this dude's kind of weird, and this is the guy that's been hanging out with my family while I've been in prison. He's been helping my wife out while I was in prison, like, you know, and he's kind of impatient. But yeah, it's one of the few scenes where a character reacts to Gosling's like pacing, kind of like a real world character would.
It'd always be funny if like he's like, "Oh, you've been helping out, oh, that's cool. You just helping her out," and then dun 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 dun. So are you helping her out, or and then he like you hear the roar like when it's like the record scratch. But you're gonna wait for my answer. Let me just stare at you for a second, and I'll give you my answer. Dun dun dun. It just goes right back into staring at.
Standard, this is called quiet intensity.
I need you to be quiet right now. Just don't ask any more questions.
But then, like, when he leaves the hallway, he's like, all right, come on, let's leave. Let's let mommy and her friend talk. Just the way he says it. Mommy and her friend. And it's like,
He just like, look, are you guys doing things together or?
But the husband introduces the conflict of the plot. Other than the like now somewhat love triangle type situation, it's not really a love triangle, but he gets beaten up. He's got criminal ties from in prison, and I'm assuming before prison. They want him to get some money, and they beat the crap out of him, and Gosling finds him, and Gosling becomes his friend, kind of, you know? The Gosling ends up trying to help him out so that the people that came after him won't come after the people he actually cares about, which is the son and Carey Mulligan. And then so he does a job with, he's going to be the driver for the husband for Standard, and that goes wrong. In a way, it's kind of like, it's super kind of crappy though, but it's like, well, the husband situation resolves itself,
right?
In terms of him being suddenly there's the husband's in between them. That kind of resolves itself. Although if you think about it, what a horrible situation, and the fact that he was involved then in that situation. It'd be, in terms of relationship, that'd be messy. But that ends up pulling Gosling into this whole mess that ties him into Albert Brooks and Ron Perlman, criminals, who he kind of has ties through anyway, through Bryan Cranston, who owns the garage that Gosling works at. I'm not using any of the characters' names. It's the actors. They're the real people in this movie. Right. That's their names.
Right.
And so that's where the whole mess comes in. There's $1 million floating around, and it's Nino. Nino is the trouble. Albert Brooks' character is actually kind of sensible for a murderous criminal.
Right.
But Nino, who's around Perlman, has a horrible temper, and he's the one that it's kind of his fault. He tried to rip some other mobsters off.
It also kind of got me because when he's talking about, like, he wants to give the money back to him, maybe it was just like the character is supposed to pick up on the way he said it, but he's like, now I just want to kill you.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he's like, dude, he's returning your money. Like, why are you so angry?
No, when he's like, and your partners, he's like, I don't have any partners. You didn't talk to anybody else? He's like, no, I'm just you. And he's like, you're really not good at this, are you? Well, the issue is, though, we get an exposition drop later on. The problem is, like, Nino can't just drop it like that because he's got to cut ties because Nino shouldn't have that money. He's stealing that money from other mobsters. And so Nino's like, nobody can know about this money, and the driver knows about this money now. So we got to take care of this guy. So
the only thing I wanted explained was that Nino's people in the other car? Or was that, Crooks's people? Or because remember he asked her later, and she's like, yeah, we knew that they were going to try to rob us, basically, or get the money from him, where Standard dies.
That's a good question, because
I would have got out of there as soon as that other car pulled up.
Like, he might not have necessarily known he was dealing with Standard specifically. Like, it was kind of through a chain of guys, and the chain between Nino and Standard, they took care of in their restaurant with a knife in the throat, and that was brutal.
Mm-hmm.
But Nino orchestrated the robbery. Standard didn't know exactly what they were doing, just that he was supposed to go rob this place. There was supposed to be $40,000. Turned out to be like $1 million. But they were robbing other mobsters who we don't ever actually see. I'm not sure who was in the car then. If it could have been Nino's guys who were supposed to then erase Standard and the woman and the driver and get the money.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could have been the other mobsters who were just there to... I think it was Nino's guys.
Yeah, because my thing was either they were supposed to rob them or they were just supposed to keep an eye on them.
I think it was Nino's guys. I think Standard and them were supposed to rob the place, get away. Nino's guys were going to chase them down, kill them, and take the money so that nobody knows who stole from these mobsters, these other mobsters.
Mm-hmm.
Because you hire these little guys, that'd be the Gosling and Standard, and these guys that, just petty crooks, hire them so that there's no actual connections to you, erase them, and then you got $1 million.
Right.
And that's the problem that Ryan Gosling presents, is he's not being erased.
Yeah, because I know they said, later they said he acted alone and there was nobody else there.
And yeah, I think that's just...
and that's what he picks up on. He said, why would they say there's only one person when they saw you take the money?
Mm-hmm.
That whole scene is in question for me. Like, I was like, what's all going on right there? Like, I know he gets a little bit of a definition of what happened later from her, but yeah, it's just like,
yeah.
Okay, hold on. Was that Standard that was stabbed in the diner?
No.
Okay, that was totally different. Okay,
that was
the way you said it, I was like, was that Standard?
No, that was the guy that was strong-arming Standard into doing the job.
Okay. Yeah, that's who I thought it was.
Gosling and Standard met him and the woman, that woman that goes with him, out by, I don't know, it was a lake or a river or wherever it was, out by some body of water. Mm-hmm. And he wrote down, he's like, how much on his hand, I'm going to pay these guys this much, these guys this much, and you this much. You all right with that? And it says F off.
Yeah. That was awesome.
and Ryan's just like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh my God. But yeah, that's why I was just the only scene I had in question. I was like, was that supposed to be Nino's guys or was that supposed to be the other dude's guys or?
I think it was supposed to be Nino's guys, but honestly, like it could be either. It doesn't matter because they end up getting in a car wreck. So let's talk about some of the few actiony scenes and maybe some of the violent scenes, because that car wreck I enjoy quite a bit. The car chase itself, like, is that the one where he flips around backwards for a little bit?
Yeah, and they try to push him.
Yeah, that car chase isn't bad, but I really like how it ends to where they finally take the turn or whatever, and it goes to the slow motion shot of like the woman's in the back seat of Ryan's car. I don't know her name offhand, but
Blanche. Blanche, yeah.
Yeah, she's not in
Blanche.
it. Blanche.
Blanche or Blanche.
The Golden Girl's up in this? Well, it goes to a shot of her. It's like slow motion shot of her in the back seat, like wigging out, and you can see through the rear window the other car flipping. And I'm like, oh, that's such a good shot.
Right.
Like, and that's how that scene that's how that chase ends. We talked about that first one. Those are the main 2 car chases. Then there's a later one where he punts Nino's car off the cliff. That thing went flying. But the one chase leads to the hotel scene. And I liked that scene. I remembered it playing out a little bit different. I've seen this several times. This last watch, like I didn't recall that. They explode her head like a melon.
Yeah.
It's intense.
And it happens out of really nowhere. Like,
Yeah.
it's just...
Ryan has to choke a bee. He slaps her around a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not nice. Our protagonist is not necessarily a good dude. Like, he seems like a guy with a good heart, but he is a vicious killer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when he goes. And he smacks her around a bit because he knows she's
in on it.
She's in on it. She knows this went bad. Standard's been murdered. And so he's trying to get answers. But he gets a sense, like, just before people show up, he looks at her phone, and there must be a text or something on there saying where they're at or saying that we're coming or something. So I think that's his tip off that, oh, somebody's about to show up.
Right.
And then her head explodes because somebody shotgunned her through a window.
All over the place, too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even the murder of Standard was intense.
Uh-huh.
Like, they got the gun sound, they're like, boom, boom! Like, he just drops to the floor. That's what I was trying to see. Like, he must have, like, first got hit in the head because he's, like, checking the back of his head.
I feel like it was like a neck or something. Maybe a neck shot or something.
That's what I thought, because if you got hit in the head, you'd be dead. But
he goes a neck shot, but then he takes several through the torso. And it's like, oh, yeah, he's done. He's done.
He is not making it out of this movie.
No. And I mean, maybe I don't know how it struck you, but like to me, from a story standpoint, like it's pretty shocking because you're like, oh, that's that
kid's dad, man.
Yeah, exactly. It's not, on the one hand, it could be a really cheesy way to be like, well, here's the trouble. Like, oh, the husband's back. You know what? That's just going to take care of itself. We're going to kill him off. But like, it doesn't necessarily go that way because you can't just erase somebody's husband out of a thing and have them be okay with it and be like, all right, well, he's gone. It's messy emotionally.
The way I saw that scene going down was it comes up, the watch goes off 5 minutes. So he starts to like pull off. And then maybe like kind of slides the car towards him to get him in. And then that other car just windows down, just starts shooting him. And then he takes off. But I did not see the like just murder.
Yeah, the guy comes out, some guy comes out of the pawn shop or whatever.
With like a high power rifle.
Yeah. The hammer scene, which is actually not well, it is a little violent. But I love that scene because it's ridiculous. This movie is like a weird, and we'll get into this on the next movie too, because it's the same type of thing but different. This movie's like a weird man fantasy, but it's like sensitive man fantasy, where it's like kind of emotional, and Ryan Gosling kind of plays it. He's not like hurt, but he plays it kind of like there's a lot of longing, but at the same time, it's also like bravado. Like the dude walks into this strip joint with a hammer in his hand and takes the hammer to the one guy who I think gets stabbed in the neck later, who's the guy that hired, the in-between Standard and Nino. So this whole scene plays out where he's got the bullet because they had given the bullet to the son as a warning. He's got the bullet and a hammer, and he like takes the hammer to the one guy's hand.
Very viciously attacks his hand with a hammer. And you can hear like the hammer hitting the like.
We'll get into that. When Gosling's character goes off, like he's so like still and stuff, but when he goes off, it's a rage, like the elevator scene, which we'll talk about in a moment, where it's not just like, because he plays it so cool the whole time, he's just like struts. But then when he actually like attacks, he just goes ape.
it's like a very, very focused rage.
Yeah, yeah.
There's like no in between. There's not a build up. It's just snap. He's there.
This is a good example of what I mean by like a man fantasy where he's super cool. He's like always cool and collected, but he's also a badass where he walks in with the hammer into the strip joint and takes it to this one guy. And then he's got the guy on the ground and he's got the hammer up. He's threatening him. And all around there's just like strippers with obviously fake boobs. I mean, if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But
No,
those things look like they're not going to, they're plastic.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to move. A tornado ain't going to move those things. There's no jiggle. But they're all like the strippers. I love the scene because the strippers, they're all topless and they're just sitting back there. And dude, they just no reaction to this. They're just stop and watch. Like they're just sitting there and like, yeah, this is every day.
Well, Charlie was going to get that anyway.
They're not freaking out. They're not nothing. They're just watching. It makes such a strange scene, but I love it. I think it's awesome.
He was legitimately going to shoot him with a bullet with a hammer.
Yeah.
He's going to hit the back of the bullet and shoot him in the head with it.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you need a pin and then the hammer. But
it would work. But
the visual, though, was enough for me.
Well, and even if it didn't fire off, he's going to hammer a bullet into his forehead. That's still going to mess a dude up.
Right.
He doesn't, but that guy ends up getting it from Albert Brooks later.
Mm-hmm.
Slight comparisons, jumping ahead to the next movie we'll cover. It doesn't start off him trying to save the girl, but it kind of becomes that. Although in an interesting sense where he's trying to save the girl, her son, and her husband, which doesn't go well. Because Transporter, male fantasy, not man fantasy. It's a very male fantasy movie. Transporter is to a purely male fantasy movie. And this is like the same type of thing. It's like male fantasy movie, except with it's like a soft male fantasy movie. It's different. It's not all bravado. It's like being cool, but it's like being emotionally cool. Like, hey, I'm a little damaged.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little hurt. I don't know why. I have no backstory. You're not going to find out why I'm like this, but I'm a little hurt.
That's kind of like his emotion.
But I'm also like a good guy. I'm not going to make a move. I'm just going to come around every day.
I'm just going to stare at you.
I'll tuck your son into bed and, take you on long drives. But, don't worry. I'm not going to rush you into anything. But then I'm going to go ape and stomp a dude's head into mush in front of you.
Right.
So the elevator scene, love it. I love it. But it's so disturbing. But it's also so good because you hit that fantasy moment where in the elevator, they get into the elevator. There's a dude in there with a gun. He knows like this dude's here for us. And then there's that moment where he puts her, like he takes his arm and shoves her behind him. The camera pans in, the lights dim. It's very, very stylized. And he turns around and has their one kiss. And it's a very like romantic type scene. And if you notice the lights had dimmed, then the lights get super bright for a split second just before he turns and it cuts and he attacks the guy. So whatever, soft sensual kiss. I think there's probably music. It's probably doom, 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 doom. Real human being. And then he turns, the guy attacks, he gets the guy on the ground and then literally crushes his, like he just, and that's, I think the most unhinged Gosling's character is because you could tell from the body movement, like it's not cool. He's not looking cool. He's just stomping this guy's head in and it crushes in and you get a shot of it. And it's horrible. And she's standing there watching the whole time. And I think that's the last shot of them together, like the last scene of them together where she leaves the elevator and she doesn't even say anything. She just looks kind of shocked. And then like he's still in the elevator and she's just staring at him and the door closes. And I'm like, that's perfect. Perfect way to end that.
That'd be quite cool if he's like reaching for the door to try not to close. Like, no.
But I mean, how do you come back from that? Like, yeah, he was there to attack them. He was protecting himself and her. Mm-hmm. But he went totally unhinged.
She's like, maybe I don't like that guy so much. She just walks out, gets in her car, and leaves.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. I was like, it's just hella intense. Woo! Like 10 automatically.
Yeah. Goes from quiet intensity to just intensity.
Right.
Okay, well, we're kind of, as I suspected might happen, going on about this quite a bit, including about the plot. But the other thing I want to mention is I really like the scene where he tracks down Nino, where he's got the weird mask on.
Yeah.
Because the mask, it's weird. What is it? It doesn't look normal. It's like in just a normal guy mask, like a bald man mask, but it doesn't look right. It doesn't look right at all. It's like gives him kind of a round head, Gosling's eyes are kind of close together, and in that mask, it makes the eyes just look super close together, and it's just really creepy. But I like that he decides to, like, I guess, is he trying to hide his identity?
I think so, because I don't think Nino ever saw him personally.
I think you're right. Oh, except at the garage, because Nino showed up. He was when Brooks wanted to invest money in the race car.
Yeah.
Which is this whole little kind of minor subplot. But it ties Nino and Brooks. I'm mixing character names and actor names. Ron Perlman's character and Brooks's character, it ties to the driver earlier in the movie before any of the drama. But anyway, yeah, I think you're right. Just so he doesn't recognize that he's the driver. But he tracks Nino down, and then he follows him in a car, and then he wrecks the car, then takes his car and punts Nino's car off the cliff. Like, dude, I don't know how they...
Field goal is good.
I don't know how they did it, because that car, like, just goes boom, flying. Like, they got the force that they must have actually used to throw that car. It's pretty impressive. But I love the scene then where Ron Perlman crawls out, and he's crawling along the beach, and Gosling comes down, and he's still got the weird mask on, and he's just, like, standing there on the beach as he does, staring at him.
Lighthouse lights.
The lighthouse light. Oh, I love that scene. It looks great. The composition is wonderful. I love the shot. And then, yeah, it's good. He just, like, slowly walks up to him as Ron Perlman's trying to run away into the ocean, and he, like, drowns him or strangles him or whatever in the ocean. The camera pulls back. Okay, so let's jump to the end. What do you think of the end? Because at this point, pretty much everybody except for Carey Mulligan in the sun, Ryan Gosling, and Albert Brooks are dead. Like, Cranston got killed. Everybody else is dead.
My question was, did he take any of that money? Because I know he leaves Brooks there with the money laying next to him.
Mm-hmm.
But
I kind of don't think he did.
That's what I mean. Like, did he just basically cut himself off from ever getting involved with that? Or,
I mean,
because I almost feel like if he would have took the money, the people at the shop where they stole it from know him. So was he basically trying to take himself out of the equation?
Yeah, I guess so.
No,
yeah. Well, I think more than anything, he was trying to take Carey Mulligan out of the equation.
Yeah.
Because I don't even know if he'd necessarily been tied. Because, so he and Albert Brooks have a knife fight in the broad daylight in a parking lot of a Chinese restaurant. Gosling gets gut stabbed. It's so weird because when he finally kills Albert Brooks, like, the final struggle is just shots of their shadows on the ground.
Right.
And it's kind of a weird angle, and it's such an odd choice, but I like it. What did you think of that?
What I really liked about that one was the previous warning, was that he's like, give me the money, and he's like, Irene and the kid will be safe, but you...
Yeah, I can't extend the same to you.
Yeah, he's like, you'll live the rest of your life always looking over your shoulder. So then you think he's going to kill him, but then he shows him where the money's at, and then just outright stabs the dude.
No, it's kind of like he's come to an agreement, like, just give me the money and it'll be fine. You'll have to run and you'll never be safe, but she'll be safe. Just give me the money.
Mm-hmm.
But then, yeah, Albert Brooks stabs him.
Yeah, he just turns around and then he stabs him.
Yep, they get a little stabbing match.
Yeah, and then I really thought for a second that when the camera panned back to who survived, I thought it was going to be Brooks.
So, do you think he survives? Because the movie ends kind of ambiguously. I mean, he doesn't go back to his apartment. Before that scene, he had called Carey Mulligan, and she didn't say anything. She answered, I think, or she picked up or was listening to the message, but she didn't say anything, and he, like, kind of said whatever, made his peace. And then after he's got stabbed, he's sitting in his car for a long time, not moving. And at first, at least for me, I'm kind of like, I think he's dead.
Mm-hmm.
But then he blinks, closes the door, drives off like he does. And he's driving down the road, and you see him driving down the road. You follow him for a little bit because that's what he does. He drives. But then it goes to Carey Mulligan, and she walks over to his apartment, knocks on the door for a while, and he doesn't answer. And then she goes back, and that's the end of the movie. So it's kind of ambiguous. In my mind, I suspect he probably just drove until he bled out.
Right. Because I was wondering if they ever thought of making a second one, and that's I want to say he survived, but
he could have.
I mean, a stomach stab is not as bad as like a chest stab.
Yeah,
but he was bleeding pretty good.
Someday, we're gonna pair something with Only God Forgives, which is a movie with Ryan Gosling by this same director that they did after this, and it's got it's different, but a similar kind of thing. It's kind of got a neon, somewhat 80s thing. but it's a wildly different movie. It's weird. It's really weird. Oh God, I want to tell you stuff, but no, someday I'll have you watch it. I don't know how I feel about that movie. Honestly, it's so strange. Someday I'll have you watch. If you've seen Only God Forgives, you know what I'm talking about. I don't think it's a very well liked movie, at least not from what I've heard. I enjoyed it, but yeah. Anyway,
it'd always be kind of funny. And I just thought about this when you were talking, but it would be kind of funny if you did the whole zoom in of the eyes to Ryan Gosling in this movie, and then put other movie themes in there, like have the pan in the flesh.
Yeah.
I can't get that on my head.
He's a real hero.
Like, do you want something? And he's like,
I don't remember who's done it, but someone, and I think it was on the BBC or somewhere in the UK, would do a thing where they set the movie to different music and aired the movie with different music. And I'm like, why? The music is one of the like most defining factors of this movie. I mean, music plays an important part in the almost all movies, but this movie in particular, a huge part of the aesthetic is the music. Like, it's important to the tone of this movie. Just the idea of like look at those credits, and then the idea of taking that music out. Like, why?
right.
Star ratings.
I'm gonna go with a 4.5 again. Like I said, there's some questionable parts for me of the story, but I mean, I'm going right between 4.5 or 5.
So
it was a good movie.
Some questionable parts when you fell asleep, maybe?
No, there was. Shut up.
I know.
No, I have so many questions about the robbery.
Yeah,
but maybe that's part of the luster of the movie was things don't get explained. Like,
it kind of does. It just doesn't do it right away. And when it does explain it, it's kind of info drop in that scene just before they kill the guy with the knife in the restaurant.
Right. That dude, and he got a fork to the eye.
Fork to the eye.
We left that part out.
And then a big old kitchen knife to the throat multiple times. Yeah.
Twice or multiple times.
Yeah. It was brutal.
And you hear the stink. Like, is it? Yeah.
It's not good. The violence is very, very, it's not, the whole movie is stylized and maybe including the violence, but it's not like stylized. It's not glamorized at all, the violence. Especially
to the line where he's like, now you have to clean up after my mess.
It's good too. It's good. Yep. So 4.5?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Going full 5 over there?
Dude, this is one of my favorite movies. On Letterboxd.com, which, listener, if you haven't been to Letterboxd, it's kind of like a social network for movie fans in that you can follow other people, but it's not like, oh, I'll make a post, check out my post. It's like you can review movies and log movies and stuff. It's pretty awesome. Anyway, on your profile, you can pick 4 favorite movies to be displayed, and then it always shows your most recent movies without having to dig into your film diary and stuff. And I've wanted to put Drive into that for my top 4 favorite movies so long. It's just I can't figure out which of the other movies to boot out to put it in there. So this is among my top 5 favorite movies of all time. So yeah, I love this movie. Solid gold 5 stars.
Got that shimmer too.
5 stars with a little bit of an invisible
6 star.
6 star wanting to shimmer through. Yeah, this is one of my favorite movies. I like it. I've seen it many times. It doesn't get old. I mean, given the pacing of the character scenes, you'd think it would, but it doesn't. I just like it. I don't even think I was a big fan of Ryan Gosling to begin with, but this movie kind of makes me like him.
I thought he did really well in this one.
Yeah, I like it.
Even though he doesn't really say much, but
when he does, it's a mumble apple pie.
Apple pie. Can I get a pie? Yeah, you can get a pie.
So, yeah, highly recommend.
Moving on to A Transporter.
This is one of Jasper's favorites.
Yep.
The Transporter's from 2002, directed by Corey Yen.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, there's 2 directors. And Louis Leterrier. Screenplay by Robert Mark Kamen and Luc Besson, who I don't think we've done any Luc Besson. He's also a director, but he did The Fifth Element. Oh, what's that Jet Li movie with the collar? Man, I like that movie. Unleashed or something. The Professional or Leon the Professional. He's done a lot of movies.
Now I will say that Besson guy, I thought they said the screenplay was by Liam Neeson when I first watched this movie. I was like, what?
I could see them putting Liam Neeson in a movie like this now. Not in 2002, I couldn't, but And it stars Jason Statham, Shuki, Francois Berland, Matt Scholes, and some other people. But that's the main cast. You've got the cop buddy, you've got the lead pair, the couple, Jason Statham and Shuki, and then you got the villain there. And the synopsis is: former Special Forces officer Frank Martin will deliver anything to anyone for the right price, and his no questions asked policy puts him in high demand. When he realizes his latest cargo is alive, it sets in motion a dangerous chain of events. The bound and gagged lie.
I think it's lie.
The bound and gagged lie is being smuggled to France by a shady American businessman, and Frank works to save her as his own illegal activities are uncovered by a French detective.
Listener, you don't know that I love driving. I mean, almost every job I've had, I was a driver in at one point. This is the first Jason. How do you say it? Jason Statham.
Jason Statham.
Jason Statham.
Jason Statham.
Jason Statham. There you go. Jason Statham movie I've seen. I watched this probably the first time. I didn't watch this when it came out because I don't even remember. Probably watched this my senior year of high school, which would be 2008.
Really? Okay.
And I just loved this movie because of the cars and the way he drove it, and they show you like how he shifts it and all that. Kind of reason why I bought when I had my Honda was I was like, yeah, now I'm the transporter.
Yeah, it's all little cars, little sports cars, I guess.
So I will say this is one of my favorite movies. It's one of the lower tier favorite movies of mine.
Okay,
but it still holds a place in my heart because it's really cheesy action at most points.
Mm-hmm.
But just the wheelman thing of it was just drew me in. This story I already knew, like as soon as it started, he's got these rules, he's got the set rules, and that one rule is going to be broken. What I like too was that first scene, like we were talking about the first scenes of the movie, is he picks up those bank robbers, and he won't move the car until they get rid of the fourth guy because he set the shocks
to a certain weight.
It's to a certain weight that it'll balance itself right. And he was like, it was 254 kilos.
Yeah, 250 kilos.
Yeah,
like
200. Yeah, I think it was 251. He's like, it's 251 kilos. He's like, no more, no less. He's like, we can't make the maneuver, and you can't maneuver right with the wrong weight.
Mm-hmm.
So this dude ends up blanking his own friend,
mm-hmm.
and he falls out of the car. He's like, okay, now we can go. And then I also like in that same scene where they're trying to get their seatbelts on and they're jammed so he can put the code in, and then closes it, and then suddenly their seatbelts work.
Uh-huh.
Where the cheese started for me is they're driving through the city, and then he gets to the bridge and he skids it. So basically he's perpendicular to the guardrails,
mm-hmm.
and somehow launches the car over the guardrail and onto a car transporter.
He peeled out. That's how.
I was like, there is no way you would have got enough momentum to hit the curb and then go up over the rail, which it looked like he had cleared the bridge by the time that this car was flying.
Momentum with which the car flies off that bridge. No amount of wheel peeling is going to give you that momentum in 3 feet that you had till the guardrail.
The movie should have ended there with him just going forward, ramming the guardrail, and then backing up, hitting that guardrail.
Just Austin Powers until the cops come up and arrest them all.
They just like slightly open the door, get out, just get out. He gets this job, and it's the girl in the bag in the back of his trunk. And then he breaks the one rule and looks in the package. And my big thing is the fight scenes
mm-hmm.
when he's in the grease fight. And the one thing I love is how he takes the pedals off the bike, where he just jumps on it and just breaks the pedals off.
The grease fight is the main thing I remember. I would watch this movie once when it came around the time it came out, so 2002, 2003,
mm-hmm.
and the grease fight was one of the main scenes that it stuck with me that I recalled.
The car stunts is what really got me with this one, and then the story was good. I mean, it was hella cheesy, but it was one of the cool, like, oh, that's. Now I want a BMW. I think still the weirdest part of the movie is the friendship he has with I think he's a detective.
Mm-hmm.
And he's always like, I know what you're doing, but I can't prove it.
For me, I think that's the high point of the movie. For me, that's my favorite thing is this weird friendship he has with this detective who clearly knows what he does. And at one point he even says after Jason Statham's car, after the transporter's car gets blown up, and he comes to question him about it. And at one point he even says, you know, he's like, this work you do, basically he says, I can look the other way. And, you know, usually it's not big. Like, you do this work, I know you do this stuff, but it's not big. The car exploding, that was big. And I can't look the other way on that type of thing. So they have this weird understanding. It almost seems like every day he shows up at his house, gives him a bunch of interrogates him, basically, like friendly, but like asks him question, eyeballs around his garage and his house, like,
yeah, especially because
like looking for evidence, but he knows, and he's at the same time he's like investigating, but also looking the other way. Like, it's a weird thing.
Yeah, like the first scene where he's talking to him about the car, and he's like looking in the windows, and he's like, "Yeah, they said it's a '99 BMW. Like, you have one. It's this one."
It's kind of like he knows, and he likes this guy, and he doesn't want to arrest him or doesn't want to like cause trouble, but at the same time, he still has to do something. Like, he's still not like, well, he has to do something, but almost like for him. Man, I'm probably looking at this character way more than the writers ever did, but it's kind of like he has to do it for himself. He's like, I can't just completely look the other way. So I'll kind of look the other way, but if I go over there and see something blatant, I'm gonna have to do something.
It's kind of like, of course, like that superhero, that like the one guy who knows who he is. Like I said, I've been watching a lot of Arrow lately. It's kind of like that. I know who you are, but I'm not gonna like really let it go. But I know what you do.
Well, it's kind of like the Commissioner Gordon Batman relationship, right?
Yeah.
Not exactly, because like Commissioner Gordon works with Batman, but in a lot of iterations, Gordon totally kind of knows who it is, but he doesn't ever let on. And so it's kind of like that. Even as the plot gets going, like he even helps him escape jail to go hunt this guy down, which I'll get to again at the end, because that would cause big trouble eventually. But it's interesting. That's definitely like the high point. One of the high points for me.
Oh man, there's some funny parts in this movie too, like where he basically every time he checks on her, he has to open the trunk. Yeah, he just gives her the drink and stuff and all that. Oh my god, this is so freaking cheesy.
It is.
But he always has to open the trunk. Like, just let her ride in the car. Like, what was your take on this movie?
I'm glad you asked, Jasper.
Oh, God.
Okay, so going into this,
I wanted that to be distant too. Oh,
I remember, like I said, I'd only watched this once. I remember not liking this movie at all. And so part of the reason I was excited to pair one of my favorite movies, Drive, with one of your favorite movies turned out to be The Transporter. I was like, I know I don't like Transporter, and there's a good chance that Jasper might not like Drive, although you turned out to like it. But going into it, I was like, I don't want to just crap on this movie. I want to give it a shot, because I don't want to like pick one of Jasper's favorite movies and then just be like, this is some crap. So watching it again, I just watched it last night. It struck me the same way it struck me the first time. The first chunk of the movie, I'm like, this is not necessarily great. It's cheesy. I should not have watched this so close to Drive, because the opening scene is like the same type of thing. It must be a Driver movie. Did Baby Driver do this? Probably did, where it has to open with a car chase. And I was not really feeling it. I was like, it's okay. It's a lot of quick cuts, but whatever, you know, and they're in Europe with the little cars. And I was like, okay, it's got that thing going on. Lots of Tokyo drift, lots of drifts and stuff. The bridge thing happened that you were talking about. And I'm like, oh God, whatever. I'm still on board. And all the way up to the car exploding. Like, so we've got the whole thing with the chick. I have some issues there, but I was like, this is whatever. It's fun. It's just a fun movie. It doesn't look terrible. The car explodes. I liked how they did the car explosion. Like, that looked good. It throws Jason Statham back. I want to read a couple. Let me pull up my notes, because I do have a couple notes up to this point. So far, I'm on board. I'm not loving it. I'm not hating it. I think it's fine. When he finds the woman in the bag, he hears something, or he has a flat. He opens it up to change this, to get his spare tire out, which of course he happens to have a flat. He finds the woman in the bag, unzips it. Her head pops out. She's got duct tape. This is not a romantic scene. Why? This is literally a woman bound and gagged in a duffel bag in his trunk that he just found. Why do we get romance music? Because that's what's playing. He's fallen in love. She's bound and gagged with duct tape across her mouth in the trunk. If he wants to fall in love, I guess that's fine. Why are we getting romance music?
Feel like you should have the camera where he's like gets this like really devious look and then just zips the bag back up. It's
not right. It's not right. It's a bad scenario. Why? Why does he get drive music now?
But you know what? Stuck in my head.
That would work though, because that's exactly like how appropriate would that be? Where like suddenly there's like this kidnapped woman in his trunk, and he gets this Ryan Gosling look on his face, and it's like dun 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 dun.
Just thought, what happened if it was Ryan Gosling in the back and he unzips it?
Oh my god!
Or he's trying to grab the spare tire, and then like the bag opens up and it's Ryan Gosling. He's like, dun, 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 dun. He's got duct tape across his mouth.
I think you just wrote my cinematic universe. Beginning, middle, and end. That's the whole thing. We'll get her out of there. It's Ryan Gosling.
It's like because in that scene it's daytime. It like goes to Jason Statham, and he's like looking at him, and it goes back, and it's dark out.
It's dark out, and he's got the light across his eyes.
Just like,
oh my god. Okay.
Oh.
Next note. So we meet the villain, who gives him a bomb. Jason Statham is breaking all of his rules anyway. He looked in the package. Somehow the villain knows, but also like then the job is the job. Well, he ends up taking another job from the guy. I think he gets the point that like the guy's threatening him, but he gives him a briefcase, and I'm like, that's a bomb. That's a bomb. And it was. Anyway, my note is villain is super over the top, creepy hand touch. When he hands him the money, when he hands Jason Statham the money, like the little envelope full of money, it's so weird and awkward, but he intentionally like overreaches and uses his finger to like touch his palm, caress it. You didn't notice that?
Yeah.
He caresses his palm a little bit, and it's like, why was that there? What is that?
He's like, I want to kill you, but
I didn't dislike it. I was just like, that's weird. That's a weird thing to do.
He's like, I want to kill you, but I like you.
Oh, here you go. Yeah, weird dude. Weird villain. Jump to later. She's making muffins or whatever those things were. Okay, and eventually she pulls the rest of the muffins out of the oven. But I'm like, she opens the oven, pulls 2 muffins out of the pan, and then closes the rest of the muffins in the oven. I'm like, who does that? Who pulls 2 muffins out of the pan and then closes the oven to burn the rest? She ends up pulling them out later, but I was like, that's weird. It's a nitpick. But let's talk about a fight, because like the driving scenes aren't bad. You get some stunts, some over the top car stunts, but some decent stunts. The fight scenes with Jason Statham, I like. I think they're done pretty well. At one point, I was like, why is he leg shotting it? Oh, it's PG-13.
Right.
He leg shots most people. He does shoot a couple people like dead. Like there's one guy that's on the ground in front of the mirror. He ends up getting shot dead. But he leg shots most people. And there's very little blood, so it's PG-13. I was like, oh, it's one of those PG-13 gun-happy murder movies where they don't really murder them, or at least they don't show blood when they do. Like Jason Statham, I think he's good at. He does some crazy martial arts kicks, and it's so weird because he's such a tall he's muscular. He's not lanky, but he's like a big, tall, muscular dude. So it's weird to see such a big dude doing these kicks and martial arts moves, but it works. I think he does well. The fight choreography is good. I like it. I think it works well. It's smooth. It's a little goofy at times, like almost in not quite Jackie Chan goofy, but there's a couple scenes that are goofy, but they're supposed to be kind of funny, like where the 2 dudes with axes come at him and chop above him and chop off to the side, and he's trying to fight him off while still kind of in this awkward position. There's one fight later where he's fighting general thugs, and it works. I'm guessing all the thugs are just stuntmen. But for a little bit, he's fighting the villain. I don't think the villain guy is very good, in terms of physical choreography, because the little bit where he's actually fighting him in that container shipyard area type thing, it just doesn't look good. That little section is not good, but then all of a sudden he runs off and there's random thugs coming after him and it looks good again. So I just don't think that guy's very great.
Yeah, he might not be, as
yeah.
Is it dexterous? No, that's the wrong word.
Man, not as flexible, not as quick, not as, whatever.
Agile.
Not as adept to doing that type of stuff. Yeah.
He's
agile.
No, stop kicking me. No, stop.
Can't we just do the thing where I touch his hand again? I just want to finger his palm.
I caressed your palm. Why are you hitting me?
The grease fight is good, too.
One thing I have to point out with the grease fight, he dumps a whole, drip pan, which is a big industrial drip pan, gallons of oil, and when he gets up, he's only splattered with it.
Yeah.
I was when he just get up, it looked like basically a non-lead version of the Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
Like,
I also liked, so he gets,
I just want to get up like, it's in my eyes. It's in my eyes.
he fights a bunch of dudes in the bus. Why are there always random, like perfectly sized metal pipes sitting around in buses? Because like all of a sudden 6 guys all stop and grab all these pipes just laying in the bus, and they're all exact pristine, super clean metal pipes, all the same length, like in this bus. Anyway, he fights them. He ends up fighting a big dude, because you got to have a big dude. Your character's a big dude, you got to have a bigger dude to fight. One little one-on-one. And then the grease fight happens. They start finally pulling out guns and shooting, and the big guy gets shot, and he's hiding behind him. He goes in the water. They start the water on fire. They dump a barrel in the water, start the water on fire so he can't emerge. It's ridiculous. It's gross. It's over the top, but I did enjoy that he then takes the big guy's corpse and like inhales his, I'm assuming, last breath out of his lungs so he can hold his breath longer underwater. Oh. It's so gross, but I was like, okay, that's kind of fun.
He's that dude as a shield the whole way down too.
Also, I don't know what rounds they were. They obviously, that tracer effect was kind of new in movies. They just put insane huge tracers on the bullets they're supposed to be flying by, which makes me believe that there's some pretty heavy caliber bullets they're using, because it looks like huge. They look huge. It makes the gunfire look massive. None of those bullets went through that guy.
I actually was looking at some scenes on YouTube afterwards to kind of like get that back in my head. But the one I went back to was that one, because those tracers rounds makes it look like they would just go straight through that body.
Yeah, it looks like they would eat through them.
Yeah.
Statham would have been annihilated.
Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, a high caliber rifle like that would have done a through and through, and it would have hit him, you know. But it's a movie.
It's a movie. Okay. I've said what I liked. Can I get to the rest now?
Yeah.
Is it okay?
Oh, God.
I'm not attacking you.
It's just,
that was important. I was like,
the axes.
That was important. I didn't want to like just crap on this movie. So I went into it and I was like, I'm going to give this movie a real shot. Like, I remember not liking it, but you know what? That was well over 10 years ago. So maybe times have changed. Maybe I've changed. Maybe I've grown. Truth is, I think I am more forgiving of movies now. Okay. Oh, and one other note before we get to the negative stuff. What kind of medieval house is it that he lives in? What is this place?
Did you get
this like castle type thing with this? It was kind of amazing, but also like, what is this house? Who lives in that? It looks like it's open. Like, if it rains, does it ever rain there?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, they're supposed to be in what, France? I believe in France.
I think so.
He's got kind of a, I am actually keeping this streak up. It's almost kind of the same setup as the Stark house, like on the edge of a cliff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Don't want to live there because that's a really high security issue.
MCU.
Yeah.
Where's Max Van Sydow? I don't know why.
He's at the top. He's waiting.
Oh, that's true.
He's the boss at the top of the castle. What I'm trying to say, he's the Bowser of transporter.
They're shooting rockets. Also, that rocket attack happened just like the detective would be a block away.
Mm-hmm.
Did he really not hear all of a sudden the house is exploding, multiple rockets going off? Like, he just left and the people show up with rockets and machine guns. Anyway, okay.
It's part of his job.
Here we go. Here is where this time, and I remember the very first time, this movie turns for me. Takes a real sour turn. The office scene. Melodramatic, soap opera level, exposition, bullshit. Him and the love interest track the one guy down, the over-the-top villain, down to his office, where suddenly her lies are exposed. Her dad shows up. He's a businessman. That whole scene plays badly. The music makes me feel like it's a soap opera. The music through this whole movie is abysmal. Some of the stuff during the chase sequences, it's just kind of like early 2000s, like European techno beat. That's fine. It's fine. But some of the score is just bad. This scene plays so horrible. The plot of this is ridiculous. It's just terrible. That whole scene, like, it's poorly directed. It looks like junk. It feels wrong. Everything just doesn't make sense. And it's just a big, all of a sudden, exposition bomb of over convoluted mess. And at that point, I was like, oh, this isn't just like it's kind of a dumb action movie. This is a bad movie scene. Like, this belongs in a bad movie. And that's where the entire movie takes a turn for me. My next note is bus station fights. I know I'm jumping forward because whatever. Some stuff happens after that point. That's fine. There's some okay stuff. I like that the detective helped him escape because he ends up in prison in jail after that. Mm-hmm. So I like that. That's going to come back to bite him. I know the movie says it was a happy ending and the cops show up and help him out. Kind of magically. They're just standing there all of a sudden 2 seconds after she blows her dad away.
Mm-hmm. That doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. There's literally like she does that and then she's like, I know he was a bad guy, but he was my dad. And then they look and there's literally the entire police force is just standing right there, like 2 feet away. I'm like, anyway, he still escaped at gunpoint from jail and every cop in that precinct seen it. And if the detective helped him if the detective was like, no, it's fine. First off, they'd be like, it's not fine. He escaped by gunpoint. And second off, if you're okay with it and you helped him, you're in jail. You're going to jail now too. Whatever. We'll look past it.
All right.
Bus station fight scene. This really ties into the music. Like, I like the fight scene. We already talked about it. The bars, grease fight. The music, though, I don't like that slow, chunky guitar. Dun, dun, dun. It's kind of like heavy guitar. I was like, oh, heavy guitar during a fight scene. That's cool. Except it's like this slow, chunky guitar, and it makes an interesting fight scene feel dull and slow.
Right. Kind of slows it down.
It makes the pace feel weird. It'd be better to go with that Euro trash techno beat. Something higher pace than just da-da. And it's not even like the fight's like down and dirty. And it's kind of still a high-paced fight. He's in closed quarters, but like it's still fast action. The music just does not convey that well.
It's like the BPM or beats per minute kind of were down here.
It just drops.
The action was up here.
Yeah, and it doesn't work for me. I'm like that. I really like that scene, but the guitar music, like the music, just makes me feel like it should just be like, oh, boring. Like it's a mismatch. Okay, and then I kind of jump towards the end. Because by the end we get the chase on the highway. Also, total minor plot point that doesn't mean anything is there's like 500 people, 400 people in a container that they need to save. That's fine. It's just there. It's just said. I guess technically we see it at the end, but I don't care. None of that matters. This doesn't matter. And I realize plot isn't important to in a movie like this, but it also shouldn't make it feel like this. It shouldn't make it feel like a B-grade 90s straight-to-video action movie that somehow got a big budget, because that's what this movie ended up feeling. By the final climax, I was like, this feels like a bad early 90s straight-to-video movie. The villain is just wacky and bad. You throw the love interest dad in there. That guy's creepy, but also like just not good. Jumping ahead further, the bad guy, love interest dad, took forever to shoot Statham. Why? Why does he walk him down to the cliff? They just like caused chaos all the way down the freeway or whatever it was, the interstate, exploding cars. And also Statham is lucky that one car that exploded didn't happen to be the car with his girlfriend in it.
It almost, and in that scene too, it almost feels like that is the car that explodes.
So why does he, it makes him get out of the car? Why doesn't he just shoot him there? Instead, he leads him down through the forest to this cliff. He's obviously like stalling. He kind of monologues. He doesn't do the like villain explain his plan. He does the like, I won and my daughter is going to be like me. And Statham's like, she'll never be like you and this and that. And like, then they think she got shot off in the distance. But it's like he's intentionally not shooting him. And I'm just like, I know he's not going to shoot Jason Statham, but it shouldn't feel like he's not shooting him. It should feel like he's going to, he wants to, this is what he's going to do. This is his plan, instead of he's literally just stalling for time until they can do the little fake out gunshot where his daughter kills him. And it didn't work. It didn't work for me. This is not a personal attack on you. Okay.
Oh, you're going to be surprised.
My final note. This is some basic ratchet. About a third of this movie, I'm kind of on board. And then once it takes that turn, and when I say on board, it's still kind of a bad movie, but I'm like, it's fun. It's dumb fun. But once it takes that turn, it goes into actively like a bad movie with some decent action sequences, but still like to where the villains, the attempt at this plot actively makes me not like it. If it was just passively not like it, I could deal with it, but it actively makes me go, it makes me cringe a little. Because watching this, I was like, what is the difference between something like this where it's over the top and cheesy and something else like Hardcore Henry or, well, we didn't have a great review of Crank, or Crank, or even certain aspects of Drive where it's like, it is over the top and cheesy, but I like it. Like, I don't know what the difference is. And it's kind of like, this movie is ridiculous, but it doesn't feel like it knows it's ridiculous. It feels like it's playing it straight, and it doesn't really work for me. And the last villain, when he finally, like, the fight scene is a little anticlimactic. Like, he gets tossed out the side of the semi, which is kind of brutal, but it just, like, happens and it's done. And it's like, oh, okay. Also, Statham was enjoying killing that guy. Like, there's an intentional cut to his face where he's getting pleasure. Like, he smiles just before he throws him out. And it's like,
what
was a lust kill. Like, he enjoyed that. That's a little upsetting. In our PG-13 movie where he's been leg shooting everybody to suddenly get like a lust kill look. Weird.
I thought this was so messed up. I remember now rewatching it. This totally messed up part where that guy, the first semi guy, he gets kicked out the door and then the door falls off. And then he's skidding.
Like, I laughed at that.
I was like, oh, he's going to... Nope.
I laughed because then the shot where it's like just slightly off the road down the cliff where you see him like, woo, fly off into the air. That's kind of funny and it's cheesy. And that one, I'm like, I'll give him that one because it looks funny. And I bet they know it looks funny. They're just like, do it. Just do it. So I'm on board with that one, but it is ridiculous.
You're like, he's going to survive. No, he's not. That was probably one of the funniest scenes for me ever.
So what are your thoughts after hearing my thoughts?
You point out a lot of things.
Because I'm not trying to destroy the movie. And I'm not even saying like, okay, I know I said this is a bad movie. This is some ratchet. But I'm not saying you're like a bad person for liking this movie. I get it. You set your position up perfectly right from the start. You're like, I like the driving. And, it's like I hinted at in the last review, it's purely male fantasy. This is male fantasy movie to the max. Jason Statham just being awesome the whole time, just being Jason Statham, being cool, not like Chev Chelios or whatever, not crank Jason Statham where he's like kind of dirty. It's like suave. He's got his rules. He's got a fancy car with a little number pad that he hits different things in. It's almost James Bond. It just doesn't have like missiles and an oil slick out the back. Mm. They still get to do an oil fight, but
got to get in there somehow.
It's got he finds this beautiful Asian chick in the back of his car, and she pays him back for saving her by having sex with him. And I was like, this is male fantasy, which is fine. I'm a male. I get it. But like, whew, it's wow. Wow. PG-13 male fantasy. But my point is like, and you like the driving stuff and like I said, male fantasy, that's cool. I get it. Hot chicks and cool action and like, I get it.
Like I said, I think my favorite in the series is two. Two kind of refined some things. Still kind of.
We already talked about two a little bit off mic.
Kind of questionable.
I have seen two. That was the last one. I know I don't know how many. There's others.
There's three and then a TV series.
Oh.
It's called Transporter Reloaded.
Oh, that's Transporter Reloaded. I seen it listed online. I didn't know what it was. 2 has the thing. The only thing I remember is where he flips the car and to take the bomb. No, over the top, way over the top. It's all good though. These movies just aren't made for me.
Right.
People like him. That's fine. I like Drive. Okay, like that should be. Not that you have to exclusively like one or the other, but if I want male fantasy driver movie, Drive is the one I want. I don't want Transporter. Not to compare them. Just saying. What else were you gonna say? I'm sorry.
No, I was just waiting for a star rating.
Do you feel good?
I think I'm going to surprise you here.
How do you feel about this? How do you feel so far about this review?
I
was worried.
My heart hurts a little bit.
Does it? No, I really did not want to come and just crap on a movie that you really liked. There's worse movies. I don't think it's irredeemable. Do you want my star rating?
Well, we could go right.
I don't know. I don't. I haven't listed this on Letterboxd yet because I'm not sure, and I kind of didn't want to tip you off to what I thought. I was pretty upset at the end of this, though. I wasn't upset, but I was slightly upset because I was like, I wanted to give this movie a chance. Movie, you had me. Then you ruined it. You lost me.
Right.
What's yours? I want to know yours.
So when I first liked this movie, I was 18, 19. I am now 30. On the rewatch and the quality of movies we watched, I'm going to have to drop this to a 3.5.
Okay.
So a whole point behind Drive.
Okay.
Because you put Drive and then Transporter against it, just Drive was a lot better.
Okay.
There is some huge issues with the plot and some huge issues with car stunts that I'm just like, man, how did they?
Yeah, that bridge one
How
does.
did you
That bridge
get-
one doesn't work.
Yeah,
It
that
just
that
doesn't
was
work.
my first question. Like, how did you think you're going to get away with that?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, three and a half. It was entertaining. It's kind of like a fun movie, but in the quality of movie, I'd have to say 3.5.
My temptation is to give it 1.5, realizing that's really low. I think I gave Ants 1.5, right? And when you do star ratings for movies, you can't necessarily, you got to go with just what you feel. You can't really directly compare movies, because when you start doing that, it breaks apart. Because sometimes I'll look at movies that I've given a 3, and then I look at other movies I'll give a 4, and I'm like, how did I give that a higher rating? You can't. You just got to roll with it. So I'm going to go 2.
Respectable.
With the idea that, like, 3 is I like it, 2 is I don't really like it. I don't really like it, but it's not 1-star territory right now. So yeah, I'm going to go 2. Just give me Jason Statham trying to stick to his rules, driving around doing things. I don't need this whole convoluted crap with this freaking businessman and his daughter, and like, I can't even stand to look at this businessman. He looks like an alien wearing a toupee. I don't understand this guy. An alien with plastic surgery wearing a toupee. Real rude of me to say that, but he's hard to look at. I don't like it. So Jasper, Baby Driver just didn't do what the studios hoped it would, but they still feel like some type of driving franchise could make driving movies cool again. So they picked up the rights to the Transporter and, oddly enough, Drive. They want to tie into that hip, modern 80s throwback feel. How would you combine the Transporter and Drive into one cinematic universe?
So let me set the area here. Okay.
So, you're gonna set the scene?
So let me set the scene. Okay. There's 2 banks on either side of town. 2 drivers are hired
Loving it already.
to transport. Okay.
Okay.
Transport and drive. So the 2 robbers get in the back. Both these drivers have women co-pilots. So they're driving through town, dodging the police. They both lose the police about 5 minutes each into the thing. Okay. And we're coming down a long road. Okay. And they're coming at each other. And he thinks the car's going to turn the other way. They turn and collide with each other.
Okay.
Okay. They get out. And then right there, Jason Statham looks at Ryan Gosling and is like, "Do you have insurance? Okay. Do you have insurance? We need to figure this out. I'm kind of in a rush." Long stare. Music comes in right here. And then he just, yeah, I do. Hands him his insurance card. Okay. Scene. Okay. Okay. We come back. Cops are trying to find him. We're looking at cops. This is where it goes south. All right. So they're filling out each other's insurance information. And then that's when Jason Statham turns to him and says, "If you weren't so horrible at driving, this wouldn't have happened."
Oh.
Ryan Gosling, again, music comes in right here. And then he bashes Jason Statham's head into the hood of his BMW.
Oh.
And then Lai, who is with Frank, we'll just go back to his name, Frank.
Character name Frank.
With Frank, is like, "I can't believe you did that. I can't believe you did that." And then what the camera does, it's in front of her, and it slightly pans to the left, and Irene is standing behind her. Dun, 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 dun. Okay.
Oh, she gets the music too, of course.
And now she's got this devious look on her face, and then bashes Lai's head into the window to back him up.
Oh.
Credits.
Did you just have the Drive couple beat the crap out of the Transporter couple and credits?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
That's.
I like it. I did not anticipate you were going to like Drive so much. I'm glad. I can't believe you.
Picture 2 people in the street. Dun, 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 dun.
Also, I like that Irene got to kick somebody's butt.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
That's my universe right there. Oh man.
Okay, that's good. I like it. So, here's mine. Might even be slightly shorter lived than yours. In the movie Drive, Ryan Gosling's character is sitting in a cafe eating pie, because that's a thing he does when he's not driving. or sitting in Irene's house, or pretending to turn wrenches under his own car that's lifted up in the garage.
Right.
He's sitting in the cafe, his actual scene from Drive, eating pie, and some dude comes up. Obviously a guy he's worked with in the past, like he's driven in the past. And the guy is like, hey, do you remember me? You drove me and my brother, a few years ago or whatever. And Gosling's obviously like irritated, like, amateur. No, you don't come talk to me. And the scene ends where he's like, yeah, so I got this other job. And Gosling gets all intense. That's one of the first times I think you see his character get super intense, where he looks at him all of a sudden. He's like, shut your mouth or I'll kick your teeth down the back of your throat. Here's my tie-in though. The guy tells him, he's like, we worked with you that one time. He's like, then we hired another wheelman and got caught and went to prison. And my brother died in prison. That other wheelman, Statham from the Transporter, except that job didn't go so well. And so my cinematic universe is that movie, the job that got messed up with Statham and this guy that Gosling threatened to boot his teeth down the back of his throat. That's it. That's the tie, though. It was just this. It's basically another Transporter movie where it doesn't really go well, and it ties into this.
So basically, you're telling me you want Frank dead.
He doesn't have to die. It just doesn't go well. Like, he fails this mission.
Mm-hmm.
It could even be interesting to where, like, it just gets messed up for some reason. Maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be Frank's fault, but he obviously didn't do well for these guys. That'll take place after the end of the first Transporter, because he had to flee France, because then after the credits of the Transporter movie, then the cops were like, so I know you helped find these people, but you totally held an inspector at gunpoint and escaped custody, so you have to go to jail. So then he hops in a car and drives off and has to go to America. And that's where he met this other guy. That's the universe.
There we go.
And then maybe later, your scene happens. After Gosling's healed up his gut stab, he's made good with Irene. And then they beat the crap out of him.
He dies.
I got to be honest, though. Like, that was one thing. Okay, so I didn't want to tie him to the guy. Other than the idea that it's funny because they're very similar concepts, just polar opposite tonally and handled very differently. I didn't really want to like tie the movies in too much because I'm like, they're just so different. Like, you don't do it. You're going to ruin them. You're going to ruin one or the other. You can't combine them. But the idea of like, how would a fight scene between Gosling and Statham go though? Because Ryan Gosling's tough. He seems like he can fight. And when he snaps, he just rages out. Like you said, it's a focused rage, but he just loses it. Statham is all flashy, like martial arts. Part of me feels like Gosling would get the crap beat out of him until maybe Statham, like, because if it's going to be a fight with Statham, like, Statham's still going to take some hits. You can't make it completely one-sided.
Yeah.
I feel like Gosling's going to be on the losing end until he gets one good hit or stab or something in. And once he gets a hold of Statham, he's going to lose it and just start pounding him. I don't know how that would end.
I think Gosling would win.
You think so?
Yeah.
He's just got that like unbridled brutality. Yeah.
I'd hate to see him with a baseball bat.
Ooh, yeah.
Jesus.
That hammer. It's a good thing the hammer scene could have been real bad.
Right.
All right. Wow. This was a good pairing though. I'm glad. Next episode, Jasper, it'll be our first episode of October, and we're going to start our Halloween stuff. I want to do it now because I just do. This episode we have had planned since before we recorded episode 1. We're going to do Alien versus Predator and Freddy versus Jason so that we can do a October Halloween Alien versus Predator versus Freddy versus Jason. Versus. I'm super excited for this. Again, man, since we've come up with the idea of doing the season finales every 10 episodes, it kind of dwarfs our original idea for this episode. But the idea of like, okay, so we're going to combine these movies, but it gives us 4 franchises to mesh together. Mm-hmm. Plus the idea of Alien and Predator and Freddy versus Jason, like especially throwing Freddy in there. Those are wildly different, universes, you know?
Right.
Also, I don't remember liking either of those movies. I remember being massively disappointed in both of them.
I don't think I've seen Alien versus Predator.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen Freddy versus Jason.
I'm going to say right now, I hate both of them. But again, clean slate, fresh view. Let's see how they strike me, right? Hey, you have something new.
Yes, I do.
Jasper.
Yeah.
If somebody wanted to find you on, say, Twitter, where would they look?
Well, okay. So to explain, I got a name takedown on Twitch, so I have to switch everything up.
Yeah.
So now Twitter, I'm still reworking the Instagram because I have a whole new vision. I kind of want to work on that, so I put that one on pause. But
are you going to tie the Twitter into it? Because maybe we should hold off on this announcement until you decide concrete across the board. I give you so you changed your Twitter name, and I give you such a hard. I jumped on your case. I felt bad. I jumped on your case way too hard. I did, but I didn't know you had a Twitch takedown, so that sucks.
Yeah, no. So now my Twitter handle is @Carranzo Media, which is @KORANSO. Sorry, it's going to take me a while. Media, which is MEDIA. And
live?
No.
The live is gone? I can't make that lame ass joke every time?
Yeah, well, it didn't seem to fit.
Kosovo Media? That doesn't work as well. Carranzo. I don't want to confuse people. That only works in text.
No, but so my Twitter is switched from there.
If you go to @GCU podcast, check out our profile description. What do they call it? Bio. And I'll have it linked in there.
Yep. So I do apologize if it's thrown anybody off, but yeah, I've had to rebrand.
Speaking of actual names, you can follow me @Randall Silvey. It's RANDALSILVEY. You can also what?
It's like, geez, he's got that down.
I do. Like, you got to get the rhythm down, so it makes sense.
That Carranz is going to throw me off for a while.
It throws me off. So I'm like, hey, Kosovo.
MUNK3Y.
Yeah, it becomes a song, and that way it's easier to spit out when you pimp it every episode. Or you can follow @GCU Podcast on Twitter, or our brother/sister/parent podcast. I don't know what it would be. I think we decided it was our parent podcast because when we split off on Twitter, it was like, I don't want to list your rules anymore, Dad. @Grawlix Podcast. And of course, you can get these episodes at grawlixpodcast.com. Check out the website. I changed the homepage a little bit so that it displays, it's fancy. If you're on desktop, it displays Grawlix Podcast episodes on the left side, GCU episodes on the right. Looks nice.
Nice and clean.
Nice and clean.
Have to give you props for that website. It looks amazing.
Thanks. I put a lot of time into it.
Oh, the purple on ours, man.
Me too. It looks so good. I like our branding. I like the GCU branding a lot. I like the Grawlix branding too, but like I've been playing with that branding for 5 years. GCU is still new to me, so I'm like, yeah. Plus, I can pull in like stupid laser grids and VHS imagery and stuff, and that's fun to play with. Ooh, Grawlix Cinematic Universe. I'll have to show you pictures of it later, Jasper. We're going to have some buttons. Jesse ordered us up some buttons.
That's what he was telling me.
Yeah. So when we hit cons up later in the future, come get some buttons.
Yeah. I can't wait for it. I actually want to see what they look like.
Yeah. All right. That's it.
That's it. Dun, dun, dun.
This recording's been going on for over 2 hours. Typically, our episodes are an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, I thought this was a good one, though.
I think so, too. We dove into it. We had a lot to say.
Yep, and just thinking right at the end of this podcast, just picture Ryan Gosling looking at you as this music plays right here. It'll look like someone just kicked his puppy.
Thanks for listening.
Next movie is Alien vs. Predator.
Irene's not in that one. Where's she at?
I don't know.
So long as Nino doesn't know. Oh, I killed Nino.
And Brooks, who's actually not his character's name, is dead.
Same with Bryan Cranston.
That's another guy you're seeing. The other guy that made the meth lab. He doesn't exist.
I do remember Freddy vs. Jason is one of the last mainstream movies I recall seeing where they have one of the protagonists drop the F-bomb, not the usual F-bomb, the other F-bomb. And from a movie that came out in the aughts, it's real shocking.
Right.
It's like that's a choice. That's a choice.
It's a big choice there, buddy.
Mm-hmm.